and welcome to the Watchman. Well, 2016 has started out the way 2015 left off. Not very good. We've seen jihadists carry out horrific terror attacks around the world, from Indonesia to Turkey to Burkina Faso. Closer to home, we've seen an ISIS supporter shoot a Philadelphia police officer parked on the street at point-blank range. Nasty stuff. But amid this relentless barrage of grim news comes a glimmer of hope. Finally, Saeed Abedini, an Iranian-American pastor who had spent the last 3 years plus languishing in an Iranian prison, is a free man. Abedini was in prison because he is a Christian and he refused to renounce Jesus Christ. We've covered this story very closely here at CBN News, and we know that believers around the world have been praying for Pastor Saeed. Well, prayer works, and God moved. Here's more on Saeed's release from my CBN colleague, George Thomas.
It's the news Christians around the world have been praying and hoping to hear. Pastor Saeed Abedini is free after nearly 4 years in an Iranian prison.
I think this was a God moment, because as much as our lawyers work really hard and our teams around the globe work really hard, there were, as you said, George, millions of people praying from probably as many languages as there are people groups.
In an exclusive interview with CBN News, Pastor Saeed's wife, Nagme, told me how she told her children their father was coming home.
Even though it was 7:30 on a weekend, they jumped up and they were jumping up and down, rejoicing. It was very loud, very joyful, and I could see a heavy weight lifted off their little shoulders.
She also spoke about the emails leaked in November, citing her decision to end public advocacy for Pastor Saeed because of marital issues.
Even though I stopped the media, I was working with our government, with different governments, trying to get him out. So I love him, but there's serious issues that we need to deal with once he's home.
Iranian state TV confirmed the news on Saturday.
Tehran's general prosecutor says that based on decisions of the country's Supreme National Security Council and general interest of the ruling system, 4 Iranian prisoners with dual nationalities have been freed within the framework of prisoner swapping.
It comes on the same day Iran and world powers are implementing a landmark nuclear deal that lifts decades-old sanctions against the country.
It's hard to ignore what looks like the obvious. That it was. The administration had denied that there was any tie-in between the sanctions and the discussions and the Americans being released.
Also released were former Marine Amir Hekmati, Washington Post reporter Jason Rezaian, along with at least 2 other prisoners.
A White House source tells CBN News in return for the release, the U.S. will either pardon or drop charges against at least 6 Iranians.
We don't have the details on who they are. That has not been released, and I don't expect it will be today. What I surmise from the conversations that I've had over the last several years, actually, were these were going to be individuals that were not, designated terrorists.
A White House source also tells CBN News Iran has committed to continue cooperating with the United States to determine the whereabouts of Robert Levinson, who has been held in Iran since 2007. His family posted this statement online. "We are happy for the other families, but once again, Bob Levinson has been left behind. We are devastated. Hashtag what about Bob?" Check back to CBN News for more on this breaking story. George Thomas, CBN News.
Now, we are all very happy about Pastor Saeed's long overdue release and wish him and his family nothing but the best. We thank God that he is home, safe and sound. But a big word of caution here to anyone who thinks the Iranian regime has suddenly changed its spots and become moderate. Yes, the Iranians released Pastor Saeed and 3 other Americans as part of this swap who had been held in captivity. But this was a prisoner swap, not a gift from the Iranians. Remember, the Obama administration also gave up 7 Iranians who had been in American custody in order to secure the release of Pastor Saeed and the others. Also, and much more importantly, the Obama administration is releasing up to $150 billion in sanctions relief to the Iranian regime. That's right. The same day the prisoners were released, the disastrous Iran nuclear deal went into effect. Folks, That means the world's #1 state sponsor of terrorism will now be flush with cash to continue to spread chaos across the Middle East and the world. At the same time, Iran continues to develop intercontinental ballistic missiles, ICBMs, that could one day reach the United States. Now, you only build ICBMs for one reason, folks, to mount them with a nuclear warhead. But I'm sure this is all just a coincidence. Just as I'm sure chanting death to America, calling the United States the great Satan, and wishing for our destruction is just bluster for domestic Iranian consumption. Folks, if history teaches us anything, it's this. When somebody tells you they want to kill you, you should listen to them and take them at their word. Time to wake up. Well, Iran is not only threatening Israel and the West, it's also locked in a regional Cold War with its rival Saudi Arabia that is quickly heating up. Here's CBN's Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell with more.
The animated video simulates an Iranian rocket attack using missiles fired from Yemen. The attack is designed to cripple Saudi Arabia on multiple fronts. The video states that it's a response to the hallucinations and empty threats of the Saud clan, and that the arm of vengeance of the Islamic world will emerge from the sleeve of the Yemenis. The video reveals the GPS coordinates of Saudi Arabia's main oil facility at the Gower field, then shows the missiles destroying the Saudi Aramco facility and setting the area on fire. It also simulates attacks on Saudi Arabia's capital, Riyadh, that it calls the Freemason Tower. Then it shows missiles striking the Saudis' main airbase and crippling its anti-missile system. An Iranian expert told CBN News the group behind the film doesn't get funding from the government, but it is affiliated with the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps and gets its inspiration from them. The rivalry between Sunni Saudi Arabia and Shiite Iran intensified when the Saudis executed a top Shiite cleric. Iran followed by allowing protesters to ransack the Saudi Arabian embassy in Tehran, prompting Saudi Arabia to cut diplomatic relations. Pakistan then weighed in on the side of the Saudis, saying they would wipe Iran off the map if Iran threatened the territorial integrity of Saudi Arabia. The concern for many in the region is that the rivalry between the two Middle East titans will escalate from a video to a direct confrontation on the battlefield. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Up next, who is the Motti? And what does the rise of radical Islam mean for the world? And what does the Bible say about it? Find out after the break. And welcome back. Pastor Michael Youssef is president and founder of Leading the Way Ministries in Atlanta and author of several great books, including his latest, End Times and the Secret of the Motti. I spoke to Pastor Youssef recently about the new book and asked him what the book of Revelation says about the rise of radical Islam, the times we're living in, and the Antichrist. Take a look. Dr. Youssef, thanks so much for joining us here again on The Watchman, and congratulations on the new book.
Thank you so much, Eric. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, always a pleasure. End Times and the Secret of the Motti. Dr. Youssef, what a timely subject. Yes. Lots to unpack in the book, and the thing I love about your books is you break down complex subjects in such an easy to understand way. Yes. So let's start with, a major topic here, the book of Revelation. A lot of people right now think, even non-believers think, something's in the air. We may be in the last days. Time may be short.
That's right.
Talk about why it's important for believers and really non-believers alike to know the book of Revelation. A lot of people, I think, are scared of it, say, I don't want any parts of it. But you write in the book that it's very important to know what the book of Revelation says.
Absolutely. Eric, it grieves me in my spirit when I see even so-called evangelical pastors and say, well, we don't understand it, it's full of symbolism, we should just leave it alone. Others who see it only as a map to the future. But for those who say, leave it alone, the book is bracketed at the front and in the end with a blessing for those who read it and understand it and comprehend it. The only book in the Bible where there are two blessings, one in the beginning, one in the end, for those who read it. And for those who just see it as a map of the future, this is about today. It is a book for today. It tells us exactly how to live with the expectation of the coming of Christ. Because there's some people, heading out for the mountain, putting on white robes. No. In fact, Revelation compels us to share Christ with those who have never heard or those who don't believe, and that we persuade every man, as Paul said. So that's really the heart of the book of Revelation. Furthermore, it is the revelation of Jesus, it's the glorified Jesus. It's not just about, dragons and sea and things. It's about Jesus. It's all about the revelation of Jesus.
Yeah, and in the book you have a chapter called A Vision of Heaven. We'll talk about that in a second. The book of Revelation has a great ending, if you're a believer, Dr. Youssef, and we'll talk about that, a glorious ending. Today, when you look at ISIS and Iran, these are two apocalyptic movements. That's why I think your book is so timely. You talk about their ideology, because terrorism is only a tactic. It's driven by this ideology. Talk about the Motti, the Islamic version of the Messiah, and his similarities to the Antichrist.
Right. I am very careful to be accurate so as not to offend anybody. Certainly, I don't want to offend the Muslim people. I love them. I share Christ with them. But I want to make a distinction that the Mahdi is a concept that mostly, not exclusively, but mostly a Shiite concept. The Sunnis have their own concept of eschatology, namely, and I'll say it very briefly, then I go to the Mahdi, that Jesus himself is going to come back to the earth, and he's going to declare himself a Muslim, and then he's going to turn on the Jews and the Christians and destroy them. If you go to the Shiite, where there is in the 800s the successor of the prophet, they believe that their successor, which is the cousin of the prophet, is different from the successors of the Sunnis, who were the friends of the prophet. And so, Ali, then his son Hussein, and so on, and they kept going until about middle of 800s. Then that 12th successor,
the 12th Imam,
the 12th Imam, or what they call the successor of the prophet, Caliph or Caliphate, disappeared at the age of 5. He disappeared at infancy. And so arose a theory within Shiite Islam, which is rejected by the Sunnis, and I want to make sure that that's said, that he is disappearing, but he did not die. He is waiting and hiding until such a time when the world becomes so chaotic, then he will come and bring peace. Now here's the thing, is they want to create the chaos. They want to create the troubles so that to force him to come out of hiding. So that is the theory that the Shiite people espouse regarding the coming of their Mahdi.
Yeah, and you see Shiite Iran right now driving for a nuclear weapon, Dr. Youssef. Talk about chaos. And I love in your books, you're such an authority on this topic. You're a native of Egypt, so you speak from a place of real authority when it comes to radical Islamic ideology and jihadist ideology. Well, Dr. Youssef, we're going to have much more coming up with you after the break. Everyone stick around, more on the Antichrist and what's coming with Dr. Michael Youssef. Stay tuned. And welcome back. We're talking to Dr. Michael Youssef, author of the great new book, End Times and the Secret of the Mahdi, and president of Leading the Way Ministries in Atlanta, Georgia, a worldwide great ministry. Dr. Youssef, a lot of people today are wondering, who is the Antichrist? You have a chapter that says the Antichrist is not who you think he is. Talk about that a bit.
Well, even the Apostle John in his epistles, he said there are many Antichrists. And anybody who sets himself against Christ is an Antichrist with a small a. But the book of Daniel is the first one to tell us about this character, the man of lawlessness that Paul described again in the Thessalonian epistles. And they're all talking about the same person. This person is going to rise in a time when the world is desperate for peace. and he's going to bring about one world religion, one world peace, unite the world together, because he's going to give them the promise that he's going to bring peace. And he'll make a covenant with Israel. But then 3.5 years later, he will renege, and then he will turn on Israel. But in a period of 7 years, the Lord Jesus Christ is going to come from heaven, and he's going to smite him and destroy him. And he's going to reign and rule forever and ever and ever. And that's the great news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's not, who's doing what and who's going where, although these are important. But always go back to the end chapter, the last chapter, because we read it and we know we win. And that gives us confidence. That takes away fear. That lifts us up every time we see the world in trouble. And so that's really the good news. The reason I wrote this book, there are a lot of pastors and theologians have written book on Revelation. I taught through the book of Revelation and preaching in my own church, and then I wrote a book on Revelation. But as I began to study, and I have a PhD from Emory University, where I actually went to the Middle East in the early 80s, and I met with some of these jihadis. I ate with them, I sat with them, I interviewed them, I talked to them, I got under the skin, and I tried to figure out some of their motivation and who they're waiting for and who's that caliphate and so forth. And through the years, I began to develop a picture that what they are thinking of as a caliphate is very similar person to what the Bible calls the Antichrist. And that's why I decided that Revelation, without that explanation, does not give people a fuller picture of the present. And that's what I sought to do.
And in the present, we have ISIS, of course, who has declared a caliphate in the heart of the Middle East. Do you think that ISIS is a sign of the times? They're obviously not mentioned in the Bible specifically, but is this a sign of maybe the Antichrist spirit that you talk about in the book?
It has been a series of succession. It started with the Wahhabi movement in Saudi Arabia with the same ideology. Then it came in 1920s to Egypt by a man named Hassan al-Banna, founded the Muslim Brotherhood movement. Then when Nasser tried to destroy them, it came another movement from that called Takfir wa Hijra. And from that, when it was destroyed, came another one called Jihad. And from Jihad came Al-Qaeda. And from Al-Qaeda came ISIS. Regardless of the name, you see the direction. It's heading in the same direction. And each successive movement becomes more violent and more determined to destroy the West, whom the Hadith and the Quran call Rome. And you remember when the 21 Christian Egyptians were beheaded on the beaches of Libya, they said they wanted the blood to flow on the Mediterranean to Rome as a warning that they're coming to Rome, to occupy Rome and set up an emirate.
An emirate, right.
Yeah, and with an emir. And so the whole direction that's been going on since the end of the 1800s of these fundamental Islamic movements, all moving in one direction. One is building up to the next. Now, whether it's ISIS or what the successor of ISIS, regardless of the name, that's the ideology. And that's what I want people to focus on, the ideology, not necessarily what name they espouse.
Yeah, you have to know the ideology. And that's a frightening thought that there may be something even worse than ISIS coming down the road. Who knows? I
believe that. I really do.
I agree, Dr. Youssef, and you laid out the trajectory in very compelling fashion, how it's gotten worse and worse over the past few centuries. Dr. Youssef, thank you so much. And again, the book is ultimately encouraging. You unpack everything in the book of Revelation, but it ends with a glorious vision of heaven. That's the end game here. As you said, the book end has a great ending, and we win. Believers in Jesus win. Amen. The book is End Times and the Secret of the Motti. Tell us where we can find again, Dr. Youssef. I think there's a website we can go to.
Yeah, there's www.endtimesecrets, or you can go to ltw.org. That's Leading the Way, our ministry, and you pre-order it. The book will not come out till February, but you can pre-order it now, so we mail it to you as soon as it arrives.
Dr. Youssef, thank you so much. Good luck with the book, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Coming up, The Watchman is moving on from CBN News. It's bittersweet, to say the least. So what's next for yours truly? Find out after the break. Welcome back. You know, folks, I have spent an incredible 10.5 years at CBN News. I started working here at CBN's Washington, D.C. Bureau way back in May 2005, and man, I have just had an amazing experience working with the top team in all of Christian news. I can't say enough about my brothers and sisters in Christ here at CBN. They're like family to me, and I am going to miss them terribly. That's right. I am moving on from CBN News into an exciting new venture. Now, I can't share any details about where I'm heading just yet, but I can say that I will still be on Christian television, and I will be taking a larger role in the pro-Israel movement. It's going to be good. And you will still be seeing me here on CBN News programs as I pop up on the 700 Club and elsewhere, providing commentary and analysis on the Middle East, terrorism, and radical Islam, everything you've come to expect from the Watchman. In the meantime, I expect to be making some exciting announcements in the next few weeks on Facebook and Twitter, and also on ericstakelbeck.com, sharing details about my next move. But on this final episode of The Watchman on CBN News, I just wanted to thank you, the viewers, for your steadfast support and prayers. I could not have done it without you. Believe me, when we started this show back in June 2010, it was actually called Stakelbeck on Terror. We made the change to The Watchman in September 2013, and I have had an absolute blast coming to you each week. I thank God for all of you and for the opportunity to do this program. And again, you will still be seeing me here on CBN News and in a new venue, but with the same message very soon. Until then, from The Watchman, God bless you, thank you, and remember, never hold your peace.